You're an Israeli agent, and it's time we start to treat AIPAC as the foreign entity that is. They must register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act. The Israelis, Edward Snowden said this because, he's a man who read the things. What was the number one intelligence threat against America? Not the Chinese, not Israel. Israel spies on America all the time. America is not Israel's friend. We are a tool used by Israel for Israel. We exist only to do things for Israel. When we become inconvenient, they just Dennis Kucinich, who was a great American politician from Cleveland. He was the mayor. Then he became a representative in Congress, a big supporter of Palestinian causes. What did AIPAC do? They got him redistricted. They gerrymandered his district out of existence so he could no longer serve. That's democracy. We let Israelis, Zionists, terminate the political career of an American representative who ably represented the 800,000 people who were in his district who supported him. But no, American democracy cannot be allowed to exist if it ends up articulating something that is critical of Israel. Israel owns America, ladies and gentlemen. Now, that's not anti-Semitic. I'm not asking anybody to go out and burn down a synagogue or commit violence against Jews, just the opposite. Please, if anybody articulates violence against Jews, be the first person out there to defend the synagogue, to defend the Jewish Culture Center, to defend Jews. If there's a Jewish student on campus who is afraid, escort them to class. Make sure that they don't feel afraid. Make sure they feel welcome. Welcome them because they are not the enemy. Jews are not the problem. Zionists are. There is a difference between the two. And Israel is not a Jewish state. Israel is a Zionist state that is seeking to destroy American democracy. And what they just did in the U.S. Congress is a direct affront to the American Constitution, that document that defines who we are and what we are as a people. The First Amendment is what makes America great, not the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, our freedom of speech. And now we can't articulate against Zionist Israel, or we're accused of hate speech. We're accused of being anti-Semitic. Guys, they're destroying America. They, not the Jews, they, the Zionists. They are the biggest enemy we face today, not communist China, not Putin's Russia, because neither China nor Russia gives a damn about what happens in this country. They don't care. They got their own issues they're worried about. The Zionists are maintaining control. They have stolen our democracy. They are corrupting our Constitution, and they have destroyed who we are and what we are as a people by making us culpable in the acts of genocide they are committing against the Palestinian on a daily basis. And I'm an American citizen, and I have a right to say this, and I challenge anybody in the United States Congress to try and take that right away.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I don't know if you saw the AIPAC website. I did a video on this. I posted on this. You guys seen this before. But on the AIPAC website, they literally brag about how much they interfere in our elections. I'll just play the part while I quickly cover that part.
Dissent. AIPAC is very proud with how they interfere in our elections. According to their website, 98% of AIPAC-backed candidates won their general election. They spent over $17 million. They also brag about defeating 13 candidates who would have undermined the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Think about that for a second. They are bragging about defeating 13 people who would have, quote-unquote, undermined the U.S.-Israeli relationship. That's them openly acknowledging that they hijacking your democracy. Now look at the number here, because they're bragging about spending $17 million in last election, which did this, and I just mentioned this next election they plan on spending 5 times that. So $17 million allowed them to defeat 13 candidates, get a 98% win percentage. What do you guys think $100 million is going to do? So that's a great point, Scott. Just for a second, Tyler, another point you said I want to expound on before I get to the last quick presentation. I just say like that. I mentioned this before. You have, just to highlight how absurd this is, you have evangelical Christians, Scott, in the United States that call Max Blumenthal, Dan Cohen, and other anti-Zionist Jews fake Jews. So you got evangelical Christians who are taking it upon them to label people as being fake Jews or real Jews based on their loyalty to a country. What is more anti-Semitic than that?
Nothing. But these evangelicals, again, I'm going to get in trouble here. Look, I believe in freedom of religion. I believe in freedom of religion, and everybody has the right to practice their own religion, and I'm not critical. But I will tell you right now that if your religion is premised on facilitating a conflict in the Middle East because you believe that's necessary to bring about the end of days so that you can have your rapture and go to heaven, screw you. I don't want your war. Okay, you don't have a right to impose that war. If God wills it, and you say the book of Revelation says that this is going to happen, then just let it happen. You don't have to do a damn thing because God is all powerful. Just let it happen. But stop interfering with America being American. To be a Christian and say that you need Armageddon. In order to have Armageddon, therefore, there must be Israel, and the Zionists help create the Israelis. So you're going to tolerate all the crimes that Israel commits because it leads to the rapture. That's insanity. And yet, there are a lot of people that believe that. You have your right to your religion, but you don't have a right to your war. Remember the difference. You can practice any religion you want. You don't have a right to your war. You don't get to go to war and put me at risk. That ain't going to happen. Not in this country, not in America. But apparently it is happening. And then I'll leave you with this too. What would you do if a bunch of Chinese Americans with dual passports created a public affairs committee and said, we're going to spend $100 million to put pro-Chinese people in the Congress? Would you go, that's okay? No, you wouldn't. What if the Russians did? What if Putin came in and said, hey, here's $100 million to all you dual passport carrying Russian Americans. Let's go ahead and elect a pro-Russian Congress. Everybody be going, the hell you will. Yeah. And yet we let the Israelis do it, and they brag about it. They just brag about it. And we do nothing because to criticize them is anti-Semitic. It's insanity. Insanity.
So I'm gonna send you guys off with some positive vibes. This is the last quick presentation, and I'll get your last words here, Scott. We're seeing the tides turn, and I spoke with Glenn Greenwald as well earlier today. Even as someone who followed this issue for a long time, I never see the tide turn against Israel. Even when I was delusional, I was like, "This is it. People finally gonna turn against Israel." Now it never happened, but no, I promise you, I never seen anything like this before. So once again, I'll be real quick here because I know we're going a little bit long. You have pro-Palestinian students at the Columbia University, where Hillary Clinton is speaking for some reason, teaching for some reason. She's a war criminal, but she got a nice little cushy teaching job now. Isn't it great how a rotating cycle works? But anyway, let me continue. Then not long ago, you see the people walking out of her class. They protesting Hillary.
You're supporting genocide. Hillary, you can't hide. You're supporting genocide.
Now that's the chant that everyone been getting hit with. I don't have the clip right now, but there was a clip where Joe Biden was being protested and saying, we charge it with genocide. I picked this one because we all hate Hillary, right? We love seeing Hillary being protested. That's why I chose this one in particular. Now, I'll just be in this subject for a second time. The point of this mini segment is that the world is turning against Israel in a way that we've never seen before. Here's another vote. The UN constantly whoops Israel ass. The United States often use their veto power just to save Israel. This just broke today. The UN Assembly calls on Israel to withdraw from all occupied territories in the Golan Heights and return to borders that existed on June 4th, 1967. Now, look at this. Isn't this interesting, guys? The resolution was voted positively by 91 countries, 8 opposed, and 62 abstained. And when you look at the people who abstained and opposed, they're generally European countries. And that, once again, I just think that's an interesting data point that a lot of people point to. Here's Danny Haifong, a friend of the show. He says the UN voted on a resolution calling on Israel to return to its 1967 borders. Russia and China joined 91 countries that voted in favor. The US, UK, and Israel were among just 8 countries to vote against. The multipolar world stands with Palestine while a crumbling minority of Western countries stand with Israel. So it's really sad, and nothing is ever really worth it, this slaughter, but Israel lost the war on public opinion in a way that I have never seen before. And that's essentially what I'm going to ask you to comment on. But the live video I'm going to show here is an Egyptian MP that is using the language of RBN, because we use harsh language. That's why I think Sky's at home here. We use harsh language to apply what people are. I say I think Zionism is equal to Nazism. I think it's fascism. I think it's one of the most brutal, evil ideologies in the world. So here's an Egyptian MP that essentially says that, and look at the reaction that he gets. So let's put this video up here real quick. And this is, look at what he's saying.
احنا مولعين، احنا مش طايقين اللي بيحصل، احنا ما بقتش تفرق معانا الحياه والموت، كلنا مشاريع شهداء من اجل فلسطين ومن اجل مصر، لكن في اداره الازمه. تعالوا جمد العلاقات، استدعي السفير واطرد هذا الكلب خارج مصر، خد اجراءات عمليه. احنا وراك.
Look at the reaction.
احنا وراك يا ريس، احنا وراك، ودي قضيه حياه وموت بالنسبه لنا، من اجل مصر مستعدين كلنا نموت. ان شعار ما اخذ بالقوه لا يسترد الا بالقوه هو الشعار الصحيح. هؤلاء مجرمين، هؤلاء قتله.
لدينا اتفاق نحن نختلف معه، هو اتفاق.
Actually, I haven't seen the second part of this. Actually, I saw the first part. I actually don't know what he says here. Let's see what he says.
لم يعد له محل من الإعراب، فعلينا أن نمزقه من أجل الأمن القومي المصري والعربي. لا نستقبل لدينا فقط ما هو واجب إنساني ووطني، إنما فرض الأمر الواقع على دولة نازية هي وجيسة الاستعمار الماضي وحليف استعمار حالي، وهي حليفة كل استعمار لتصفية المنطقة، ومصر هي الجائزة الكبرى. هم كاتبين وقايلين، هم عارفين بيعملوا ايه. هو اللي بيحدث في ليبيا بمعزل عن اللي بيحصل كان في دارفور، عن اللي بيحصل مع سد النهضة، كل واحد إدارة واحدة. وأنا آسف أن أحدثكم للمرة العاشرة في هذا، وفي ظل تواطؤ إقليمي للأسف يسقط الكثيرون في تطبيع مذل. احنا موقعين الاتفاق من أكثر من 50 سنة، وهو ممزق في إيد الشعب المصري لم يتعاطى معه.
I shouldn't see the second part, but here's the description. The Egyptian MP calls Israel a Nazi company to a sound of loud applause by his colleagues. So that last time I'm gonna share. Been one hell of a day, but I'm gonna give you your last general thoughts on Israel's current standing. There are a lot of people, a lot of countries that are pulling their ambassadorship for Israel, and I believe you mentioned before, Glenn mentioned before, we mentioned before, Israel is committing this barbarity in an act of desperation. Like when you are cornered, when your regime is threatened, of course they're gonna go out in a bang and an atrocity. So I really think they marked their graves here. But I want to get your general thoughts. I appreciate your time. I know we went a little longer, but I appreciate you making time with us. Any last thoughts on the current reaction to Israel? Scott, I give you last words here.
Well, I believe that Israel has committed a fatal error. Look, there was a way for Israel to recover from October 7th. October 7th was a huge embarrassment for Israel. They suffered a grievous military defeat, intelligence failure, political disaster. But the way for Israel to have recovered was not to overreact, to instead resecure its border. The world would have supported that. They could have even supported a punitive military campaign targeting Hamas without hitting the civilians. But they didn't do that. Had they done that, had Israel behaved responsibly, I think we would see streets filled with pro-Israeli demonstrators. But that's not what Israel did, because Israel can't do that, because it is a Zionist entity pre-programmed to do the most horrific things. Israel is not a nation capable of wise policies designed to promote peaceful outcomes. It is a violent state. It is a military state. It is a militarized state. It is a criminal enterprise. Every aspect of its relationship with the Palestinian people, and indeed its relationship with the non-Jewish world, is a criminal activity because they only care about themselves. And I think they've been caught out. We see the reaction in the world towards Israel today. We see the demonstrations in the street. We're seeing people starting to articulate not just in favor of Palestine, but in favor of Hamas. We see the Turkish president calling Hamas freedom fighters. And we see other nations in the world starting to articulate in support of the Palestinian cause in a way which implies, if not approval, at least sympathy for what Hamas has done. The tables have turned. This is a very dangerous period of time, though, because Zionist Israel is not going to go gently into that good night, but they are going to rage against the dying of the light. That's my butchering of Dylan Thomas. But this needs to be managed properly, and we need leadership to do that. That leadership is not going to come from the United States because we have sold out to Israel. We are owned by Israel. Fortunately, we live in a world where multipolarity is emerging, and there are balances to the American hegemony. And those balances come, for instance, from China, which had negotiated a miraculous rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia that nobody thought possible. It now happened. And China has been approached by the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic States to become the new mediator for the Palestinian cause, and China has articulated in favor of a free and independent Palestinian state. So I think we're seeing this, this movement, this movement of this mass, this geopolitical mass that's moving that the Zionists can't stop. They can't beat it. It's going to happen. And I think you're going to see Zionism broken by this. I think Zionist Israel is going to be consigned to the trash heap of history, and whatever emerges, whether they call it Israel or whatever, will be a much better place for the Jewish people, a much safer place. Israel has not been about the safety of the Jews. Israel, as it currently exists, has actually put the Jews around the world at greater risk because of Zionist Israel's ability to coerce nations into embracing all of Judaism as part of Zionism. No, that's not. I think this post-conflict state that will exist, whatever it's called, will be a place that actually creates the best opportunity for the Jewish people of the world to live in peace and harmony with their neighbors, because no longer will they be automatically identified with the evil of the Zionist entity. But now I'm starting to talk like a revolutionary, so you broke me.